That's really what has bonded us is we all have dirt on each other. Yeah, it's like has nothing to do with intelligence.
You're
the worst
really
thing you
smart
could be
guy.
is a smart alcoholic, because most alcoholics think they're smart, but they're not. They're clever. You see, if I was smart, I would have stopped drinking 20 years before. It's because most people tell the truth, okay?
Do they?
They do, because you know why? They believe the lies they tell themselves. Everything is about how we define ourselves and the words that we use, right? If you say I love you, right, then you punch me in the face. Your idea of love is a little bit different.
I think that's what I did last year.
I think it was, and I had to learn what your idea of love was.
You have still a group of 15 to 20 friends from high school, or even earlier than that you're still friends with today, like 50 years later.
Yeah, so that's, 40. Okay. Let's not push
you're in the autumn of your years, I forgot. Hi everybody, this is Dan Dante, and welcome to another episode of Middle Age Mets, the show for people who spent their entire childhood locked out of the house until the streetlights came on. So today we're talking motivation, we're talking recovery, we're talking helping your friends and helping others. We're talking about a lot of things, everything that makes your life go well. And we're talking Derrick Carbin today. Derrick, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you. Dan and I have been friends for a long time.
Long time. Maybe a little too long.
Well, no, I don't. It doesn't mean we don't disagree about certain things, but mostly what I love about this topic is about what you said, middle-aged mess, right? We're guys, quote, middle-aged if we live to be, we don't have to do the math, but it's...
Don't do the math, please.
Yeah, but it's an opportunity to talk about things that happen in life, right? And as we were saying, part of the thing that I've done in this portion of my life, the quote unquote third act of my life, is find ways to...
Third and final.
We talked about that too, right? How much more time do we have left? Like I said, I was talking to this guy the other day, and he's saying, I'm in the autumn of my years, and the guy's in his 60s, and I go, this is winter. You're gonna be close to done pretty soon.
It's snowing. He better get the ski boots out.
Let's squeeze the marrow out of life as much as we can right now. And that's the point, is to find where you can go ahead and motivate yourself to get the most out of your life right now.
So let's find out. Before we get into what you're doing today, because what you're doing today is pretty cool and it's interesting. I don't exactly understand it, but I'm excited to find out more. But let's find out about you. So where did you come from? How did Derrick Carbin grow to become the person you are and what you're doing today?
Well, I'm a California boy, first of all. I was born in California, in Hollywood, actually. So I always fancied myself somewhat of an actor. But like all actors, I want to direct. I want to make things happen. But no,
But with that face, you should be behind the screen.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's a face made for podcasts, not the video part, but the actual audio. I grew up in Burbank, basically, and lived there for
the entertainment capital of the world, by the way.
It is, and it was very entertaining at the time. Urban K, as we like to call it. It's it's Mayberry, right? You grow up there, and everybody knows everybody.
But wasn't it weird about Burbank is that like everybody's mom or dad was like a script supervisor or like, a lighting assistant. None of them were the stars, the celebrities, but they were kind of, gravitating around them.
That's true now, but when I was there, it wasn't. It was just middle-class families, people who did everything. And
it wasn't entertainment back then?
A lot of people worked at Lockheed. Okay. A lot of people worked not so much in the entertainment industry because that came later, like towards the 90s after I left. In fact, the big thing in Burbank was I grew up there. There was one theater, right? It was called the Cornell Theater, named so because it was on Cornell, right?
Very creative.
They closed that down in 1977, right after Jaws was their big blockbuster, and they didn't have another theater in the...
If you can't make money on Jaws, it's time to shut down, isn't it?
And they did. And there was not another theater in there for the longest time. It was kind of that studio area, but not a lot of people were part of that. Now they are. So Burbank was a very, again, picturesque kind of place, Mayberry as I like to call it. And then I moved to the Valley in the 90s, and I liked it there.
Isn't Burbank the Valley, kind of?
It is technically, it's on the border. It is part of the San Fernando Valley, but I moved to the heart of it in the 90s, and I've been there for the last 30+ years. And
hardcore Valley girl, hardcore malls.
Yeah, it's funny. I was watching Fast Times at Ridgemont High with my daughter, who's a Gen Z, right, 22 years old. And she goes, "Is that what it was like?" And I go, "Yeah,
exactly.
That's exactly what it was like."
100% on the money. Oh, God.
Me, I go, you see what movies are in the 80s. It's a lot of boobies and politically incorrect words that they use. But I said, that was it, and that was it. And I grew up in that time, and I'm an 80s kid, and I graduated from Burbank High. And I went to UCLA for 4 years to get everyone's second choice, a psychology degree, because if you're not good enough to get an engineering
if you're not a lawyer, then that's so many options.
But I didn't want to do that. So, and I didn't want to do psychology either. So what happens, a buddy of mine says, "Hey, why don't we get into this real estate appraisal thing?" Now, if you don't know what real estate appraisal is, I walk into people's house and tell them how much they're not worth because they always think it's worth more. Right?
Yes.
You know if you've ever tried to get a loan.
I've never liked an appraiser in my life.
Most people don't.
I don't know.
Hate the
I don't know if
messenger.
present companies accept it or not, but it's very frustrating. Yes.
It's a job, right? That I got, and it became a career. Yeah. It's one of those things where, hey, let's do this for a couple years. Well, 35 years later, I'm still doing it.
But let's talk for a second about a very unusual thing that you and your buddies have. That you have still a group of 15 to 20 friends from high school, or even earlier than that you're still friends with today, like 50 years later.
Yeah. So that's 40. Okay. Let's not. Push
you're in the autumn of your years. I forgot.
I'm in the autumn-ish. The thing with that is what's so interesting is a lot of that has to do with Burbank, because everybody knows everybody. Everybody's parents know everybody, and we've stayed in touch for, like you said, 40 years. I mean, 40 to 45 years, depending on how far back you go. And with one friend, it is 50 years. I think I've known him since I was 7 or 8 years old. Yeah. And the idea is that when you get, it's like, that whole thing in The Godfather, right? Every time I get out, they draw me back in. That's what it's like with Burbank. Is every time I try and get out of that, the group draws me back.
Have you ever tried to get out? I don't think you've ever tried to. I mean, I think you're the one holding them together half the time.
Away, but no, but look, that's the other thing too that I've always thought that's very important is human beings, and I cherish friendships, and friendships take work, and that means you go and you build these friendships over time, and you sustain them like anything. You don't just have friends and then, oh yeah, we've been friends for 40 years. I never talked to them.
Most people do. Most people have friends in like transitional friends. They have friends in college. They have friends in wherever, and then they move or they're gone or they have kids.
That's a fair point.
That's what's so interesting about your group. Your group has survived high school, college, young adulthood kids. Now your kids are gone. Yeah. Now you're in the autumn of your years. Yeah. I mean, and you're still together, and not like once in a while phone call. I mean, you guys are together all the time.
Well, we are, and it is interesting that you say that, because that's the thing is, although many times we get together, it's still 1983.
It's always 1983. Right?
You've been to the parties.
I've been there.
There has been music made after 1988. You can play something like that.
Absolutely
but if you listen to the playlist,
not in that environment. Never.
It's very different, and so it is unusual to have those kind of friends. But I've been very fortunate. I'm blessed with a friend who I've had since birth. I mean, the guy and I, his dad knew my grandfather, and we grew up next door to each other. He moved to Texas, but we're still in touch after 6 decades almost. Yeah, and I think part of that is, like I said, I find it so important to maintain those friendships.
Right.
I don't give up on people necessarily, although we were talking where I had a friendship for 40 years that I kind of had to.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't healthy. It wasn't doing what I thought was good, and
But I'll tell you why I bring it up, because we haven't gotten to what you're doing with yourself now, which is also super interesting. But like the fact that you've had this male group of friends, men usually don't have the emotional connections that women do, right? And because you've been surrounded by these 10, 15 guys, and you guys have shared everything, you've been such a part of each other's life, that I think it's easier for you to really try and help people, a lot easier for you than it would be for a guy who's a typical guy who doesn't have kind of that cohort of people who's been around him his whole life.
Well,
because you're used to helping, you're used to listening, you're used to responding.
Well, that is true. From my perspective, okay, that's accurate, as I like to say, rather than true or false, because that drives me crazy. Being accurate.
Okay, let's split some hairs. We'll split as many hairs as you want.
It's not splitting hairs. The reason I say that is because most people tell the truth. Okay.
Do they?
They do, because you know why? They believe the lies they tell themselves.
Okay, so they tell their own truth.
Well, there is no own truth, right? It's either true or it's not. What they tell you is what they think is accurate based on what they believe. Okay. So in other words, you tell me you're 6'4", and I believe you, even though I know
when I'm lying down.
But it's not accurate. Okay. But you believe that based on whatever things you say. So I never try and correct people on what they believe, and I don't like saying true or lie, because immediately you get defensive. You're lying to me. No, I'm not. It's like you're inaccurate. You ever call someone in Australia and you go, "Hey, how's it going? It's good Wednesday to you." They go, "It's Thursday, mate," and you're like, "No, it's Wednesday."
Is that the accent they use?
No, it's not. It's a terrible Australian accent. I don't really do it. The only thing I do is like maybe Henry Hill from Hank.
We'll do that later. We'll do that minute 27.
So that's I don't mean to digress, but of course I always do. And that's why I believe that's being accurate rather than true. So what I find interesting about that is like I listen to what people say. Okay, I do, because that's the thing is I want to know, what are you telling me? I want to know what you believe, because you know me. I've said this a million times. I don't argue beliefs with anyone.
Right.
You can tell me whatever height you are, and I'll believe you, even though I know it's not accurate, or maybe in some instances not even true. But the problem is because I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. And that's what I'm not trying to convince myself that we're friends. I'm just your friend because I'm here for you.
But do you think part of this is because you had to learn, again, and I'm just thinking about most men.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, I think men tend to be a little bit loner, a little bit lone wolf.
So that's the point.
know?
It's interesting, though. What I find is women's friendships drop off as they get relationships with men. I think men need more relationships as they get with women. You know, when
But do you think that's what actually happens? I think it's the opposite. I think when men get women, all of a sudden their buddies aren't around so much anymore.
Well,
you know?
it depends on the woman, okay,
Clearly.
of course,
Yes,
and it
yes,
depends
yes.
on the kind of friendships that you have.
Right.
You know, a lot of the time, what you're talking about, the friends I have, we play poker on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And that's how we get together and do that, is just throwing some cards around.
Right.
You know, I'm not a big
and
golfer.
reciting 80s movies lines over and over and over
ad nauseum
and over again.
until it's like my daughters hear me do it now, and
in
they
fact,
go, "Really, Dad? We're not playing poker."
I don't think there's a movie past Airplane in the entire Burbank ecosystem.
Yeah, there really isn't. I mean, I think they might get up to Ghostbusters, but that's pushing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, you know, it is one of those. I think someone did Shrek once, and we caught him on it. Go, no, we can't.
How dare you?
We can't have that.
Excommunicate that fucker. Kidding me?
So, you know, it is harder for guys, I think, to maintain those relationships on a deep level.
Yeah,
the
totally.
superficial friendships. Most women will have one or two friends that are totally deep and emotional, right? But they lose all those other friends they used to hang out with. And again, you know, these are generalizations. Obviously, there's going to be the exceptions to that.
Yeah.
I think that the unique quality of the friends that we have is that we do get together. We've known each other through this thing. We have that commonality of the Burbank connection and things like that.
Yeah.
It's just,
and I don't mind slumming it with the Burbank people.
Oh,
you know,
wow.
I'm cool. I can hit down. Yeah, I can hit down. It's no problem.
Post, and you're there. You know, look, but it's nice to have those, and it's important to have any support system, and that I found to be vital in any aspect, whether it come from friends that you know from work, or friends that you know if you're into religious aspects, friends that you have from just golfing, or again, what we do, poker, things like that.
Being able to help people now in more of a professional sense. Yeah. Has to spring out of the fact you've been helping your buddies and they've been helping you, which we'll get into in a minute, for a long, long time.
Yes, that's true.
Like, it's not like your group is like running away when there's like a problem. I mean, you guys,
it's funny because I think it was one of the friends that said, there are fair weather friends, right?
Yeah.
But we're really foul weather friends.
Totally.
We stick closer when things get bad and rely on each other, as opposed to, I'm your friend if things are good, but when things aren't, dude, I gotta, look, there's something and I need, there's not that going on with our friendship. It is friendships out of certain levels of difficulty and challenges.
Right.
Maybe that's what did it, because, coincidentally, the thing that a lot of us have is certain levels of tragedy and trauma. Fathers that passed away.
Don't we all? I mean, everybody's got something that's
Everybody's
happened, right?
got something, but it's acknowledging that and being open enough to say.
And that's the other thing about why your group of friends is so interesting, is because you guys do. You are vulnerable with each other. You're emotional with each other. So you talk to each other.
I think you hit on something there. That's really what has bonded us, is we all have dirt on each other. Yeah, it's like I know what you did back then, but we don't use it to that.
Yeah, never.
We use it as a means to say, me too.
Yeah.
And look, those two words are the most powerful thing that you can give someone when you're talking or listening.
Well, it ended a whole
them.
bunch of comedians' careers.
That's a different Me Too. That has a hashtag in front of it. And when you put that hashtag in front of anything, it's going to cause problems. But it's interesting how that changed too.
Yeah.
But that idea that me too, I as well, I understand because I've been through that, or something similar.
And it's also cool, as we're getting on in years, in our middle ages, what's interesting to me too is like we all kind of pass through these phases at the same time, roughly, right?
Yes.
High school, college, young adult, get married, kids, profession, building career, kids leaving for college, and what do we do next? And to have a group that you can just, because one of the things that people get hurt by is they think they're alone. They think they're the only one.
Exactly. That's
you
the Me
motherfuckers,
Too.
right?
No,
and
but
me to a certain extent.
That's the Me Too that gets you out of that. And what you said, the isolation, most people think, I'm the freak here, I don't belong.
Right.
And they pull themselves away when they need those people the most. You and I have talked to that. We've gone through some things together.
Yeah.
And again, we
Sometimes
don't
with our
talk
clothes
every
on.
day, but when we do, it's intense.
Yeah.
You joke that I bring up Nietzsche or some...
Kant. It's always Kant. Somehow Kant always comes into every single conversation.
And he goes, where do you get this stuff? And it's like, but that's how our friendship goes. It'll go to something deeper. And I think that's really what it is.
Yeah.
Is that connectedness through
shared experiences.
And experiences that are deep.
Yeah.
And then you can have the superficial time where you're throwing around the cars and things like that, or whatever you're doing.
And there is something too about vulnerability, and I'm sure we're going to get into it as we kind of continue talking this way, but like the vulnerability of seeing other people at their worst.
Yeah.
and helping them through it.
Yeah.
Or being at your worst and having your friends help you through it.
Yeah.
Which really kind of trains you and gives you, a way to help other people when you go through it for 20, 30, 40 years. To go ahead and share that with people who don't have the luck that you've had to have such a great group of friends is really it's really important.
And that's a great point too, is I don't really give advice. I give experience. I give experience because if I don't have that experience, I'll say, well, the worst thing you could ask me is, what would you do in this circumstance? I don't know what I would do. All I can tell you is what I have done if it's something similar. And if I don't have that experience, I say, you need to find someone who's going through that right now.
I just want to thank God we're not splitting hairs, throughout this conversation.
It's all semantics.
Experience and advice.
Everything is about how we define ourselves and the words that we use, right? If you say, I love you, right, then you punch me in the face. Your idea of love is a little bit different.
I think that's what I did last year.
I had to learn what your idea of love was. And that's the funny thing about words is you have to learn.
So let's talk about a little bit of trauma that you experienced, which has really kind of set the direction for your life for the last 20 years, right? You were a raging alcoholic for a while.
Yeah.
And I think you've used those words. I'm not making them up.
No. I would define myself as, I prefer drunk.
Okay, that works too.
But because
we're not going to split hairs between.
But that's the thing is, again, what terms? But I drank a lot for a long time.
Why? Why'd you start? Do you remember?
Why did I start? Because I love the way it made me feel. And again, it goes back to that fear. My whole life has been covered in fear. From the time I was a little kid, growing up in the household with a father who drank, to not knowing how to behave and never knowing how to feel. Because in my house, it's like, why are you doing that? Why are you crying? What's going on? Sensitive guy like myself.
Yeah.
So I never knew how to feel. Best part about drinking is I always knew how I was going to feel. Drunk.
Right.
Wedding drunk, funeral drunk, Thursday drunk. I always had that consistency with that emotion.
So was it the fear? Was it the fear of like the unknown? You didn't know what was going to happen in your family?
Fear of uncertainty is a big deal.
Yeah.
I have that, but it's just fear in general. Mostly of just, look, it all comes down to how we perceive love, And it was like, if you knew me, you wouldn't like me, you wouldn't love me. Or if I do it wrong, or if I make a mistake, or if I...
Now, that was imprinted in your head by your parents,
I think part of it is that. Part of it's genetic, too. I think it's just who I am. Because I've seen people who, we talked about a friend of ours. He has no fear. The guy has no fear. It's like it doesn't matter what happens. He's going to turn it into something positive. I don't get that.
Yeah.
And there are people like that, I'm sure, a number of people. So when I drank, it eliminated that. I wouldn't say it gave me courage, but it took away the fear so that I could do those things. And then I would do them. But at the end, the worst part is if you're like myself, where alcohol becomes something that it used to help you with and then it doesn't work, that's the most terrifying place to be as an alcoholic.
Well, so I talked to a lot of alcoholics on the show in my life. There's a lot of alcoholics out there. I don't know if you know.
Yeah.
But I talked to them. And look, I'm one of those people, I'm extremely fortunate. I can drink one drink and not drink anymore. I never had a problem with it. I don't understand the addiction to it.
Right.
And, like if I have a bad hangover, I won't drink for weeks, if not months, because I just don't want to deal with it. Right. What about you didn't allow you to govern yourself? What about you let the alcohol take over?
Well,
because it did. I saw it a couple times. It was scary.
You did. You were there. The interesting thing to me always about the alcoholic and the quote-unquote normal drinker, right, or any person who's addicted is, it's bad for you. You know it's going to do harm to you. You know the results of when you've done it countless numbers of times, and yet you do it anyways. That, to me, is the very definition of an addict.
I agree. And what was it in you? Did you ever look, search?
It was obviously that I still had that fear, and I was hoping that I could recreate that first time, that time that I was drinking, like trying to chase that initial buzz. And it was never a conscious thing. It wasn't like I was sitting there going, boy, I'm chasing that initial buzz. It's that if I just drink this, then everything will be fine. Look, the classic example is when I was, my wife was pregnant with our first daughter, and I said, because I didn't want to be the drunk dad, I said, I'm going to stop drinking tequila. So I stopped drinking tequila and went to gin.
On Wednesdays, between 3 and 5.
In my mind, that was the thing. It wasn't the drinking that was the problem. It was the tequila. And if I learned how to manage gin...
Was that really? Did you really say that?
I really did.
And did you really believe that was some type of...
I really believed that if I was drinking tequila, if I drank red wine, I would sober up. Now...
Wow, you were fucked up.
I know.
Raging drunk.
That's the kind of thinking, though, that doesn't... Again, that's why those words...
Dude, you're a really smart guy.
Has nothing to do with intelligence.
You're
the worst
really
thing you could be is a smart alcoholic, because most alcoholics think they're smart, but they're not. They're clever. You see, if I was smart, I would have stopped drinking 20 years before, right? But I wasn't smart. I was clever, and I figured I could get around it.
But you knew it was bullshit? When you were saying that, you knew it was bullshit.
Because we tell ourselves the lies till they become true. That's why I say these things. That's why I use these terms that I use, because I've seen it over and over. It's delusional that I thought that I really could sober up because
by drinking red wine.
And you're like, dude, you realize how crazy that sounds? No, you're crazy. I'm the one, and you get angry because the fear is coming out now. See, fear turned outwards becomes anger, and fear turned inwards becomes sadness or depression. I'm not talking about clinical depression.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the sadness that comes with the realization that I really am afraid, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
You know? And so, like I said, the drinking would alleviate that, but then it doesn't work towards the
But
end.
only alleviate that for the night.
Yeah.
And then the
for
next
the 5
day-
minutes.
Yeah.
Until you had to keep drinking until you passed out, and then and it becomes cyclical. The cycle starts over and over and over again. It's terrible.
At what point did you realize this is fucked up? I got to do something about
Well,
this.
it was 18 years ago, actually.
Do we know how many days we've been sober?
6,400 days, roughly. 6,401, I think it is right now.
Okay.
I just hit a milestone. It might be 6,402.
Congratulations,
But
by the way.
thank
It is
you. Yeah,
amazing.
but
And I will tell you, as a longtime friend of yours,
Yeah.
the sober you is a million miles better than the drunk you, and I'm so glad that you're a part of my life.
I appreciate that. Look, my dad did not drink for 16 years. He got sober at the same age I was, but he didn't do anything in recovery. He just stopped drinking, and it manifested in other forms of addiction. Okay, he was completely angry all the time up until he died.
I mean, that had to be scary.
It was terrifying for me.
Yeah.
And when he died, because I was so much like him, the worst thing possible that could happen happened. I had nothing to fight against anymore, and I became him. Oof. And that same anger and everything that I had been fighting my whole life against, there was nothing to fight against. So what happened, though, was at that point where you barely can look in the mirror at yourself.
Yeah.
And say, I can't do this anymore.
But wait, you were a pretty functioning alcoholic.
Totally functioning.
I mean, your job was fine, wife, kids,
everything.
I mean, you were a great dad.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lot of good stuff going on.
But inside it was turmoil, and it was terror, and it was an emptiness that is unfathomable to the normal human being who doesn't suffer from these things. Now, look, there's lots of people who hit that quote unquote bottom, and I say quote unquote because the bottom is a weird thing for a lot of people. Because I do work with a lot of people who are who have alcoholism and recovery and things like that. The hardest part to watch is them to keep bottoming out as they go lower.
What was your
and lower
bottom?
level.
What happened that you were finally said okay?
I think it was that point that I realized if I don't stop today. Okay, and I wasn't planning to stop for the rest of my life. Don't get me wrong. It was like get a week, maybe 2, then I'd be fine. That I was going to wind up the kind of person that I never wanted to be, and I really was on the verge of losing everything. I found out later how close my wife was to leaving me, and a lot of things that I dodged by that much, and it just worked out that the timing was good. Again, I was not in the autumn of my years at that time. I was in the summer, if you would.
In the middle.
And then something clicked. And what I found also was, what was so vital to me was allowing myself to not think that I'm the big guy anymore. That I'm the one in charge. Now, it talks about.
I mean, isn't that where the fear comes from? Am I good enough? Can I run this show? Am I the guy?
That's it. And when I made a decision, obviously, that in my life, that there was something bigger than me. And that's, if you're in recovery, they talk about higher power all the time, and it's related to God. But I've always had God in my life. Good Catholic boy, raised that way.
Yes.
But God was never bigger than me. It was more of like what I call a celestial butler. That if I prayed really hard and did my rosary, that he would behave and give me what I want, like Arthur or something like that.
That's awesome. John Gielgud, in the sky.
But if I did something bad, he
By the way,
was
I'm using celestial butler from now on. I'm not giving you any credit for it.
Of course not. Of course, if you use it 3 times, it becomes yours. And so what happened was, instead of that attitude, it became something that I realized what we're talking about here is that my experiences and what I've gone through could be useful to help other people. And that gave me purpose, and that got me out of fear.
What role did your friends play when you were in recovery, if any?
For the most part, they were supportive. Everyone in my family was. It's like you said, you saw how I was, so it wasn't like, no, don't stop drinking, Derrick, you're such a great guy. It wasn't like that. It was simply, okay, if you're going to do this,
I just have one memory of it.
Yeah, please.
I probably shouldn't say it.
Yeah,
it's not really that bad. Yeah. But I remember we were in Santa Monica one time.
Yeah.
And I remember you literally passed out on the floor, dead, and I don't remember if I was picking up or something. Like there was some people literally by your arms and legs, like literally carrying you out of this bar. And it wasn't like a raging party. It was like we were at some bar having like a beer and watching a fucking ball game.
And I'm sure I had several before that. And
oh my God, it was crazy.
That's the problem too, is you never know when it's going to hit you that way. You know, because like I said, I could sober up with some red wine, but I wasn't sober, and I've been drinking all day probably.
And the interesting thing about you too, by the way, I'll say is like, you know, you kind of have this idea in your mind's eye of what an alcoholic should be.
Yes.
It is so not you. It is so not you.
I looked in the mirror and I did not see an alcoholic, but what I saw was a pathetic human being that I didn't want to be.
Okay.
And then what I realized is, like, you could look at someone who's diabetic and say, you don't look like a diabetic, you know, but you are. And either you take steps to fix that and change it, or you just live with it and say, I'm just going to die diabetic, so give me a candy bar.
Yeah.
You know? That's
so what was your recovery like? How did you, I mean,
it was slow.
Did the 12 steps?
I've done that. I go to meetings. I'm in the program Alcoholics Anonymous, and I don't like to talk about it in terms of that because of the, quote, anonymous part.
Yeah.
But the idea of recovery to me is what happened was this realization of how important it was to do the steps, right? But and then give it back. And as I did that, that's when things started to change for me. And that's when I realized what my real vocation was. It's not to go in your house and tell you.
How did things change? Did they change emotionally? Did they change spiritually? Like, what was the change?
Sure. Spiritually, for sure, because what it did was it took away the fear and gave me an even footing in life so that I wasn't afraid to move forward with my own life, you know, to live my life as the most authentic.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like using that word because it's like you live your life how you live your life.
I'm sure you have a word like 1% off that's a little better, but that's good for now.
Original, or you know. And you know, it's funny, Dan, because I love talking these things with you because you actually are interested, because you're not that way. You're not.
Exactly. And it's so fascinating to me.
Most people don't find that fascinating. They're just like, well, you're drunk, have fun, you know. No,
but I'm really interested, honestly, in the why of it, because I'm not like that. Because I'm not that person. I wonder, what is it in your makeup? Is it in your development as a child, in your parents? Like, what is it that didn't allow you to switch? And by the way, just as a completely random, weird aside, I had a buddy of mine who wrote a book about serial killers.
Yeah.
One particular serial killer. And he had his theory was that, like, all of us have the ability to be a serial killer, but 99.999% have the button that we can turn it off.
Yeah.
Like, you see somebody pisses you off, you're like, I want to kill that guy.
Right.
But then your brain goes, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Serial killers don't have that button.
Yeah.
And to me, alcoholism, drug addiction, and a lot of these, you know, vices are just people not being able to turn that button off for some reason.
You know, but it's different for different people because I see addiction everywhere I look.
I like to look at the New York Times every day. Is it an addiction?
Well, again, if it causes a problem and you know you shouldn't do it, and there's a difference between being addicted to something, which causes a detrimental thing in your life. And I wouldn't say, again, in that sense, my sister's addicted, but the obsessive part of it, that's the thing that I think can turn into addiction. And see, I'm obsessive. Again, when I was a kid, it was all the OCD stuff. They didn't call it OCD, and they just called it being an asshole.
Yeah, you're fucking weird.
Yeah,
nobody liked you.
You're a jerk, you know, or whatever, nerd, whatever it was. Had to have in my room, everything was set up like a museum. Everything had to be perfect, you know, and it was this certain way. And my clothes were flat, like a little flat man with a shirt and the belt to match with the socks.
I mean,
and the whole thing.
You were avoiding uncertainty, right?
That's right.
Like everything I've heard, because you knew where it was going to be. You didn't have to worry about it.
Exactly. See, you get it.
Yeah, you know.
And the obsessive mind will do that. I need the certainty. My sister needs the certainty of that package coming because it makes her feel better. Is she addicted to it? Because she stopped probably, but it would show up maybe in other ways too.
Yeah.
You know, that's why it's the serial killer thing. There's a psychopathology to that, right? That says, okay, 99.9% aren't going to become serial killers, but there is that 1%. Human beings are vast, and that's why when you're looking at people who are addicted, the addiction is as different as the people that are addicted.
And that's why I'm so interested in the why.
Yeah.
Because we talked about you don't want to be alone. None of us want to be alone, right? I don't want to be alone either. I don't want to be the only person who's dealing with something. So I like to understand what it is that makes me different from you. Why are you different? Maybe, why are you better than me? Why are you worse than me? Why do you do things that I don't do or can't do? Like, those are things that
There's a lot of luck in life, okay?
Yeah.
And things happen genetically, things happen environmentally, things just happen. You know, you can't control that luck thing, right? Even though I try to make certain the uncertain. And some people will drink and they'll never become alcoholic. Some people will drink for like a long period of time and then just stop on their own.
Which is, by the way, what I did, you know?
And some people will never stop. And I've seen that tragedy too. And you see them, like you said, you have everything to lose. It's not like you're, you know, like the quote unquote Skid Row bum of alcoholism. these are men and women who you would never
Well, it's
think.
the guys like you who are just smart people, have a good life, very upstanding, your
And
family, a strong community, you had everything in the world.
And
yet,
I don't deny I have a level of intelligence, but see, intelligence is like height or being pretty. It's a gift, right?
Yep.
And if you only use it for certain things, it's a waste of that gift.
Yep.
If you're 6'4" and you never pick up something or help someone who can't reach to that, or if you're very pretty and you never try to make other people feel attractive, or if you're smart and you make everyone feel stupid,
Yeah.
you're wasting a talent, right? But
so
that's
let's use that as a segue. So
Okay.
now you took your recovery, which was very successful,
Okay.
and now you're using it to help other people. How did
Yes.
that all start?
That started in recovery, and it started about, look, I've always liked to help people.
Right.
It's just, see, that's part of my makeup. When I was 7 years old, this little girl lost her roller skates. I love telling this, or ice skates, right?
Yeah.
Couldn't find them. So we're on this ice skating rink. And I spent half an hour helping her. And then she found him. And I was about to go on my turn. The guy goes, "Oh, your time is up. You don't get to, ice skate." So what did I learn? Never help people.
Exactly.
Unless
Especially
you
chicks.
get something out of it, right?
Of course.
Now, that's a lesson I learned when I was 7, and it carried me till I was like 37,
Right.
okay? And that's the problem is we learn these lessons young and we don't get out of them. What I learned is help everybody you can.
Yeah.
Because even though some people may not appreciate it and you might not get something directly, it will help you in the long run.
Yeah.
And it has.
I got to tell you, dude, I'm such a believer in karma.
Yeah?
And I'm not a very...
That's a good point.
I'm not a spiritual guy. I'm not a religious guy.
Come on, you are.
But
not religious, but you are spiritual.
But somehow, like when you do the right thing, when you take the right action, somehow you get it back. I don't even know how it works. I don't know what,
look,
who's,
because
got the strings.
Talk about being smart, right? If you put a core, every time you turn the light switch on, it goes on, right? You don't have to know how the electricity works. You just know that I turn the switch on, and out comes the light.
Yeah.
And if you're walking around in the dark bumping into things and you're too stubborn to try and turn on the light, whose fault is that? It's not the light's fault, right?
Yeah.
So the karma thing to me is, I'll give you an example of something that happened yesterday. I do appraising, right? And I told this lady, yeah, I'll do the appraisal for you. She's in this situation. And she goes, we had another appraisal done and they didn't do it right because it didn't work to the way they wanted to. But I looked at the appraisal and I said, they did everything right. I didn't see the appraisal. And I went out there and she'd already paid me. And I said, look, I don't want you to pay for something you don't need. Now, I could have taken the money and said, I'll just give you my work. You paid me. It's fine. Yeah. But I said, it's not cool, and I just wanted to do this. It's up to you. I left the decision to her. And she's like, I don't think so. I trust your judgment. And what happens is then that makes me feel good that I did the right thing so I could sleep at night, or at least I felt I did the right thing. It could come back to haunt me. Who knows? Yep. But not only that, then she goes, I know this guy who does these kind of things, and that's how it works.
Yeah.
And it's not a surprise to me when I turn the light switch on that the light comes on. Yeah. It's not a surprise to me when you do the right thing, the right things happen. It's not a guarantee, because many times the light switch doesn't come on. You go, well, there you go. I'm never going to turn the light switch on.
Let's blow up the house and go kill 10 people in the valley.
It's the bulb thing. I got to change the bulb. That happens too.
Okay, so tell me let's go specifically. When was the first time you said, I'm going to go help somebody in recovery?
I don't think I said that to myself. I just did it.
Okay.
I'll know when it happened. I do know when it happened.
Okay.
One of the things
I figured it did. You just didn't want to answer my question. Like, help a brother out here. I'm trying to
It was that when in recovery and especially in meetings, they ask for your number. They say, call me. And you're like, why would I call you? I got nothing to say. I don't know you. Yeah. Right. But I took these people's numbers and I would call them. And they go, why are you calling me? And I go, because you told me to. It was the first time I actually did what someone told me to do.
Right.
And once I spoke with them, and that feeling like they said, yeah, me too, and they described things that I go, no one's ever talked to me that way. I realized, and they said, and thank you for helping me. I go, is that accurate? And I tested the theory.
Was it the truth?
It turned out to be true. And not only that, it was accurate too. Not every time. People I call and I go, please don't call me anymore.
Yeah.
But you see, it's the reward system, the same thing as the alcohol did in the beginning. It hits that part of the brain that says, there's something that's coming out of this that I like. Yeah. And look, behavior that's rewarded continues, and behavior that's punished usually stops.
Look, there's nothing better in the world than helping people. Yeah. There's really not. I mean, as much of an asshole as I am, and I tell this story all the time. Well, not a story, but I have senior housing communities.
Yes.
And I walk in a senior housing community, and I have a 95-year-old woman come up and hug me and say, thank you, Dan, I'm living my best life. Yeah. Like, what's better than that? Money's not better than that. Nothing's better than that.
I totally agree. Now, there are people who argue that point, too, and that's the lie they choose to believe. Yeah. But you're right, and especially when the expectation is so low.
Yeah.
That you're not looking for that, hey, give me this because I'm helping you. It's just
Right.
when it comes out of nowhere,
Yeah.
you go, hey, I kind of like that.
Yeah.
You see, that was the problem when I was 7, was the expectation was I'm helping her and something good will happen to me,
Right.
and something didn't.
Right.
And then I used that as the means to say, from now on, this is how I'm going to live my life.
So what does it look like now? So let's talk about your company or how you're dealing with it.
Yeah, it's DRC Motivation.
Okay.
DRCmotivation.com is the website, and I do Instagram. Where what it is I have a degree in psychology, right? Like I said, I went to UCLA, and I really did want to help people. I especially wanted to help children, child psychology.
Yeah.
Then I worked with children, and I realized it's not the kids' fault; it's the parents.
Always, 100% of the time.
100%, right?
Yeah.
And I looked at that, and I said, do I really want to work with adults? Well, I joke about God has a sense of humor. When I help people now, what
Talking
I
about
really
Celestial Butler once again.
yes,
Okay.
yeah,
So I'll
you
make
call
sure.
him Jeeves, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
When I help these people that I help, I see the 7-year-old inside of them.
Yeah.
And it's always a 7-year-old that runs their life. Somewhere between 7 and 10, we learn something that screws us up, and we use that for the rest of our life. This little 7-year-old Dan is running around going, don't listen to Derrick. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
7-year-old Dan is just saying "fuck you" over and over again,
right? Because he can.
Yeah.
And I see that in these 40, 50, whatever-year-old bodies.
Yeah.
And then I do get to help them with that.
Right.
And what I've been able to do is, again, it motivates. It centers around fear and what motivates us. A lot of people say, I love fear. It motivates me. And I go, no, that doesn't, okay? Because most people will paralyze you. And you can use fear in a different way, but it's not regular fear, right?
Yeah.
It's irrational fear.
Yeah.
My joke is that I'm going to walk out of here and this is going to be the best day of my life. I had the best thing, and the meteor's going to hit me. Now, meteors never kill anybody, right? But I'm going to be the guy that walks out and bam, out of space, Elon Musk is going to shoot up his missile right now. It's going to hit me right in the head, right? That's the irrational fear that says, so therefore, I should never do anything good, because then I can avoid that meteor, right? And it's getting past that irrational fear and talking to people and saying, I've done that. My irrational fear is, how am I going to live my life sober? There's no way I can do this because I didn't know any other way. And then someone showed me. Yeah,
so what is your pitch? I don't know if it's a pitch to people. What is your story, people, when who comes to you for help, or who are you finding to help, or how does it work? Because you're not like a traditional coach.
No, it's not about that. It's people who hear something in my message, and I try to be positive.
Right.
It's not about regret. It's not about living in the past and saying, I wish I'd done this, or worrying about the future. There's no way I can move forward in my job or with my, if I have addiction, or working out or making money. It's, what am I doing right now? And it's always about right now. Right now, this is the most important thing in the universe for you and I, because it's what we're doing, right? And if I start to think, God, as soon as I'm done here, I got to hit that traffic, and then it's going to, and I got to blah, 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 and I go crazy, okay? Or if I said, I should have worn a different shirt, or whatever.
I was going to tell you
I
earlier,
know
by the way,
it was coming up, but if I did, everything would have been perfect. No, it's right now. How do I make it go good from right now, and how do I move it forward?
Right.
I talk about this like magic time machine, right? Because as a kid, I always dream. It's 2015's gone and went. Where's my flying time machine car? Back to the Future. Thank you, Marty.
That's right. That's right.
But, so we have a time machine.
Yeah.
Because most of us remember the past a certain way, and if we change the way we remember the past, it will affect us how we are right now. In my past, it was always about turmoil and fighting and things. Now I don't remember it that way. It's there.
Isn't that what we're always fighting again? Our own rose-colored or yellow-colored or green-colored glasses
or
of how,
glasses, or the dark glass that we look through and say, maybe it wasn't that way, so let me think of it differently.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I worry about what's going to happen in the future and project that into it. If I remember the past differently, it changes how I am now, and it can change my future.
Well, like the EST classes and all the derivatives, the Tony Robbins, what they all say is your past has power over you.
Yes.
And how do you eliminate that power?
Exactly.
So you're living from today forward as opposed to past.
And that's that change in thinking of how I remember it. So, and it could motivate you.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that way, or I want to be something forward, but how do we stay in this moment?
So how do people find you? How do you work with people?
Well, on my Instagram is how they can find me. They can look me up at drcmotivation.com. I just Google me, whatever, and that's how they'll find me. And it's not I'm not out there in all social media, because really what I'm looking to help is guys like us.
Yeah.
Guys who
middle-aged messes, if you will.
Middle-aged messes.
Ooh,
I like that. You should use that as a moniker or as a name. The thing that I see, it like we were talking about this, is guys in their 50s, right, who have done something their whole life, and they're like either retiring or they're burned out, or their kids have grown up, and they're losing their identity of who they were.
Yeah.
To be, who am I now and how am I to go moving forward? And for me, it was this opportunity right now to say, I love helping people.
Yeah.
I have a certain acumen to do it. How can I do that in a way that's positive?
Yeah.
And keep people motivated to keep doing it. Because that's the other thing, too. We live in a society where it's one and done. I just want a pill. I just want something that'll fix me now.
Ozempic, where is it? Find it for me,
Great
please.
example, right?
Yeah.
You know, and the poor bastard who's been trying to lose weight for 30 years, who's working out every day, and he's lost 10 pounds. He's like, really? I could have took that pill? He's angry, right?
Exactly.
But that
Same as
doesn't affect
Viagra,
me.
but that's a different
Well,
conversation.
that's a whole different thing. Remember, I have that saying, people don't behave, right? I say it all the time. My kids hate it. Most of my family hates it because it's true. People don't behave, so I have to. That's that doing the right thing.
Right.
But it gets old.
Right.
But if I don't keep at it, I don't do well. I don't sleep good at night. I start to suffer from it. I'm the one that suffers.
Yeah.
And so I have to behave in the way that I think other people should, regardless of what they do. If everybody's taking Ozempic, I'm still the dumbass who's running 3 miles trying to lose weight or doing, eating right, things like that.
Well, Derrick, I love you.
I love you.
I've loved you for a long time. Oh. In fact, it might be a good time on that.
No,
We'll
the feeling is mutual,
later.
but let's keep it professional at this point.
No, you're one of the next to me, you're one of the smartest and funniest and coolest guys I know.
Well, that's a compliment, because I feel the same about you.
Huge.
And I mean that.
No, absolutely. And I'm so glad to, because look, I've been to many of these poker matches.
Yes.
I've been with you for many, many decades now.
Yes.
And got the benefit of your wisdom and your intelligence and all the funny shit you say. And you're always, and you care. Like, you really care. And of all your, I gotta tell you, the whole group of friends that you hang out with, and I kind of hang out with a little bit, it's a really wonderful group of caring, vulnerable, emotionally connected guys.
I agree.
And I've always felt like you're kind of a little bit like the ringleader of that, because you
That's very sweet.
You're just the greatest. And so I'm really happy to hear that you're going out into the world and spreading what you have.
I'm
and
happy
your
to
gifts.
do it. And really, it's been a pleasure always to sit with you. And I'd love to do this again sometime.
Sure.
I thank you for your time always. And
we'll see how many people watch the show, though. I mean, I need a little bit of a
please,
draw.
I'll
Like, help
start
me out on
promoting it
Instagram,
as
will you? All right, one more time. Where can they find you?
drcmotivation.com.
Awesome.
And I also do real estate appraisal, too. Like I said,
Just in case.
if you Google Derrick Carbin, everything will pop up.
Okay.
And there's not many of Derrick Carbins out there, which is fortunate for me. But yeah, look me up online, and you can reach me that way. That's the best way to reach me.
Awesome.
And Derrick at drcmotivation.com is my email if you want to reach me that way. Dan, thank you so much.
No,
I really
thank you,
appreciate
man.
it.
I really appreciate it. I always appreciate it. Every year.
Yeah.
And every month. And every poker game and every other thing and whatever. And even dragging you out of a bar, unconscious. That wasn't so bad either.
It's a few years ago.
Go to drcmotivation.com. Google Derrick Carbin. Like and subscribe. middleagedmess.com. I'm Dan and Dante. Thanks. We'll see you next time.